All right, here is Tuesday, January 2nd. It's the first day of the year. Pretty much they just dropped everything. They sold off on the first day. But how you have to sort of play this is, again, no bias, no nothing. You just have to sort of play levels and charts and go with the flow. So what's very difficult was this first 30 minutes. You can see that the bull pivot or bear pivot was right here. The mid range is right here. And then you have your full ATR right here. So almost out of the gate, we're almost at full ATR. If you look to the left, here you're right at the mid or the bull on the multi-day, right? So anytime you see that, it's just like any rules for the intraday. Below the pivot, you shoot for the next level, right? So what I should anticipate for the morning is us going to mid-range ATR. And sure enough, what do we do? Within that first hour, we went to the full range or mid-range ATR. And that's where we sort of found support for that morning session. Anything more than that would have been really extended, like really extended. And you got to understand, the market moves and waves, and it doesn't just crash. That would be really bad. If in one day we go a full ATR for the weekly. We got close today, but let's walk through and how one could have traded this. But you see how the first 15 minutes, that's 5, 10, 15, you automatically they're just selling it off. So right here, once it actually came back below the ATR, what do? You target the next ATR pivot. And there it is. Once this broke, you can see it closed. Then that would be resistance, and you would want to get in as close as you can. And then your next target would be down at the next pivot. And you can see that it sort of coincides to, let's see here, I'll go ahead and label this, that this multi-day pivot is right here. So it's a little bit past this pivot. But at this point, I mean, we're getting close to almost 2 ATR pivots. This is a -2 ATR. So let's go through the morning and show you what happens and why you have to play each TPO, each 30-minute candle, and why it's important to see how it closes. Because there's a multiple ways that you can play around the levels. So here you go. You see how it came all the way down and almost tapped it, and never exact. I mean, it was like 5 points off, and that was 5 minutes before the end of the close of that candle. Remember what I've said before. Write this down right now. Write this down. The last 5 minutes of a candle is really critical, because you could if you end up selling hard into a level right into the last 5 minutes, you could have a bounce. And let's see what it ends up doing. You end up bouncing all the way that last 5 minutes up, and then the next TPO, the 5-minute candle, goes right into VWAP. So you could see 510, and these are pretty, right now on the chart, it doesn't look like a lot, but let's see, 720, that's 16,720, all the way to let's say about 790. So 2090, that is 70 points. This right here in 10 minutes traveled 70 points. Not bad. I mean, let's see. Am I getting that right? The math? Yeah, 720. Let's say 85. Yeah. So let's say 25 to make it easy, give or take, to 85. So that's 60 points in 10 minutes. And what do? Again, you have VWAP and you have a level, so now you want to short it. You just don't question it. Just don't question it. If you're scared about getting in, get in with, like, say, 1 contract or 2 contracts, small, and then keep your stop tight. And then you're out just a little bit of money, say $500 or something. Well, that's worth it, because if you're right and the volatility and we still end up going down, you can see that you would have gone, this came up, then now came right back down, and this next 30-minute candle came all the way back down to the 720. So there you go. You had another move, 60, 70 point move. Let's look again. All right, now you see that we broke, and now we're down at a pivot. And what time is it? We have to look at the time. So we are now in a new TPO. It's 9:30. So you need to be very careful. Now that this broke, you can enter in here, but remember, if it ever comes back above, then that would be a failed breakdown reversal. Usually that happens on certain like hourly periods. So like the 9:30 or even like the 10:30, or I mean really it's the 30-minute candles. But let's see how this plays out. So you see how you come down, you hit this multi-day pivot. Actually, where am I trying to say? Oh, that's the 9:30. So it's right here in the morning. It drops below, and so in your mind you're thinking, oh, they're gonna keep dropping. Well, what is happening? They end up coming back up. At this point, this candle right here, this red, this needed to just keep on going. It just needed to keep on going. And then you would have red. The mere fact that it's like slowing down and it's like consolidating right here, that could mean trouble, because going into the rest of the morning period. So what ends up happening, it broke back above. When you remember, these are 5-minute candles. You want to see closures, and higher the close, the more likely that it's picked a range. You see how this sort of closed above a little bit, and then it went up and then came back down. A big close above is a good indication that it sort of picked its direction. So you see how also this 30-minute candle closed, it came down and then it closed almost back above this pivot. It sure enough did close above the multi-day. So let's keep going. So now that right there, that was your retest of the pivot, and you want to be going long. And what do you want to target? You want to target the next pivot. I mean, really, you guess if you have multiple contracts, it would be VWAP, but ideally you're getting into the close of the European session, which is 10:30. So that usually, wherever you're at 10:30, if you're above a pivot, like if you were above here, then you would call the morning session. That would be your lows. Now the only question is, where are the highs for the morning session? So the highs of the morning session, I would assume, would be right here. One, it's a pivot, but look, this is where it rejected. If this ends up breaking above here, then my next target would be right here. So you have to play in increments, but I rather play near a level than play anywhere in between. So you want to get in as close as you can and give yourself a little bit of breathing room. But like right here, this would have stopped you out, and yes, you could have reversed, and then it would have stopped you out again. It would have been really frustrating if you had big size and you had tight stops. So sometimes you have to just sort of let things sort of play out, and then you have to tell that story. But the mere fact that we came back above, and now it's telling me probably the rest of the morning is you're going to be somewhat range bound. So let's take a look. What does end up happening? The next TPO of the 30-minute candle, it closed under VWAP, but look how you have this green candle. It's your first green candle, and so they're scooping this up. Every time they dropped it, they scooped it up. So they're eyeing this pivot. So let's see what ends up happening. They came right to the pivot. So all in a span of this drop right here at 10:05. You could have scooped it up, and then by 10:45, so that would have been 40 minutes. So this was not necessarily a whole hour, but you see how close to an hour you have to sort of wait and let it pan out. So in hindsight, this looks easy because you're looking at this, but these are 5-minute candles, and these 5-minute candles, the way they're closing, there could be a lot of movement in between these candles. It can go down, go up, go down, go up. So this right here, in the moment, could be really difficult to trade. That's why it's critical to just look at these pivots in certain time frames, right? And then you get in and you step away. Because think about this. If this thing would have came above and closed, I mean, to me, look, you're above a multi-day pivot. You're above this pivot. I mean, you just have to trust that they're going to scoop this up, right? Now, the question is, what do you do here? And one would say, oh, you're above VWAP. You're above here. Well, now, you just sort of have to risk it. You have to be willing to risk something for something. So I'm willing to risk 5 or 10 points for another possible 60, 70 points. And we're still in the morning session. So let's see what ends up happening. They just slowly grind up, but they never broke. And look, they dropped it. And that's the first sign of weakness right there, of that small little trend. So you don't want to chase. I mean, you could, but you're going to have to risk about 25 to 30 points because, again, you have to risk above here. So what ends up happening? They end up coming all the way back up to the pivot. But what do? They never broke it. And then what do we have? We have the 11:30 candle. This is 11:30, so it's the last 30-minute candle before the 12. So that 12 o'clock candle is really important. I've said that over and over and over, is anything can happen in between that 12 and 12:30 candle. And usually it's about 5 to 15 minutes before the 30-minute candles that a move can make. So this needs to get some legs. Like, you can short right here, and if it ends up breaking above, absolutely, you switch and you go long, and guess what? They may push this up, and then if they end up closing it above this pivot, then that's going to be your range for the afternoon, as in the likelihood is they found support, and now they could end up keep grinding up, and then they possibly could fill the gap. Seen that before, where they just scoop it up, but they needed to do that quick, right? So if they didn't, again, you have to trust. Short, and then walk away for at least 30 minutes until it plays out. If you just stare at it, it'll just psych you out. Does me all the time. So what does it end up doing? Boom, drops. And then that was right at 11:45. So watch what happens in 15 minutes. That would be 3 5-minute candles. That's the next candle. That's the next candle. In 15 minutes, they just did that same move from 87 down to 15. So that let's see, 87, let's say 85 to 15. So what was that? That is 60 points. So you had 60 points down, 60 points up, 60 points down, and then what do? You fucking get out. Get out of the position. Like, it's 12 o'clock. Don't risk it. Look, you're pushing into support at 12 o'clock. Like, unless this blows through and then you're below it at 12 or like 12:30, you don't risk it. If anything, you want to flip. You want to flip because you're going right into it. So let's see what ends up happening right at 12. So see how we closed above. The new TPO candle is 12. And remember, now this is a whole new session. Afternoon session. It's at 12:30. So here, anything can happen, as in it could push down. And this is not really a great risk reward for long either, because in reality, you have to risk below the 700 area, because remember, it's the multi-day pivot. So in reality, what could happen is they could break it down, then scoop it back up, and then go higher. So let's see what ends up happening. See, they broke it, and they held it, and they brought it back up. So you see how this was a failed breakdown reversal. So with that said, this has to get some legs. Imagine this. Just picture how the afternoon, if you were going to trade the afternoon, Picture how the afternoon would play out. Because this was a failed breakdown and now it's reversing above a pivot, this needs to keep grinding higher and squeezing up. If it does not and it breaks back below this, and with a candle that closes, you see how this candle closed and then came back up and then closes, then that means the rest of the afternoon we could end up going a lot lower. Even though this was the low in the morning. That just means we're on a trend. So let's see what ends up happening in the afternoon. You see how it's just so slowly grinding up, but it wasn't squeezing. So as you're moving up, I'm moving my stop, right? And the moment I get stopped out, and really your stop should have been right here below this candle. So if it ever came back to this line, it means it's pretty weak. So you see how then now it closed below? That candle right there was 10 minutes. That was at the 1250 mark. This next candle is the 1255 mark. So remember, it's the last 5 minutes of the candle. You know, so the last 5 minutes of the candle, they're closing it below this pivot and possibly below the multi-day, right? So let's see what ends up happening. Boom. They closed it right. They dropped it, then closed it above the multi-day, but then the next candle that opened, they shot it back down, and then let's see what ends up happening. Then they basically they scooped it up, they used it as support or resistance, same thing. See how it's coming up. Look, they brought it all the way back. See that this little nub? They came all the way back to right here. This is testing the breakdown. So if you missed this move, and hopefully you weren't chasing, if you did, you need to have a tight stop. This is where you go in short, and you're only really going to have one opportunity to short it. Like if this is your best risk reward getting in right here. If you're wrong, they break above, and then what they're going to do is they're going to squeeze it. If you're right, then the next hour they're going to make their way down to here. And in reality, which you can see that they did, but you see how if you break this pivot, which is the mid-range, where do you go? Your next pivot is down here. So really your target, you see right here, that 608 is the pivot. But in reality, my goal is going to be the plus or the -2 ATR, because it does not happen very often. I'm talking about 1% of 1% of the year, maybe 1% of the year that I've seen this happen. So this just happens to be a fluke because it happens to be the day after a holiday. Yesterday, the markets were closed on Monday, and so there's a bunch of pent-up energy, and the fact that it's the first day of the year. So they're just correcting their books. So don't look at this as a thing that happens every day. But if I was playing this, the rule always states pivot to pivot. So you're right here to this pivot, and your goal should be to this pivot. Let's see what ends up happening. Boom. They broke through, and usually what you'll see is a breakthrough, and then what could end up happening if it doesn't keep getting momentum, they could bring it back up. But either way, if you just walked away right here, and that was, you got in, that's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 minutes, and you just set a timer on your phone, and you put in your execution order right here, you would have been executed those orders, and you would have got your profit. And yeah, you missed out on this, but guess what? Who cares? You just made almost 60 points right here. Another 60 points. So what ends up happening? Comes up. This is where you short again. This is your reload. If it comes back above, that means it's finding legs. So look what it's doing. It's coming down, coming back up. So it's finding legs. It's having a hard time getting back down here. So you always have to be on the lookout around a pivot. Remember, 30-minute candles. You see this 30-minute candle? You see how it's trying to close back above here? So let's see what ends up happening. Comes back down, goes back up, and what are we at? New TPO, 230. It's the last 30 minutes of the day, and where are we at? Look at that. 30-minute candle closed above. So that scares me sometimes. Well, I say scares me. It tells me that there's two potential moves can happen. You see how you had this candle right here is a solid, and then you're gonna keep pushing down. When you have the next candle, this is a potential scoop. They're coming down and it's a failed breakdown, and then they'll reverse. So you have 30 minutes left in the day, and VWAP hasn't caught up. So there is a likelihood that at any point of that last 30 minutes that they could come all the way back up to VWAP. You know, if I was long biased, then I would actually aim for the 700 Ys, because that is the multi-day pivot. So I'm looking for them to scoop up and basically profit take, you know, from the shorts, or whether they're however you want to look at it. So let's play this out. They drop and immediately fake, and then there's your candle right there. That 5-minute, boom. It's sort of telling you that they're scooping it up. And that's why I'm saying these are 5-minute candles. So 5-minute candles gives you plenty of time to make a decision, but you want to see how the market reacts. And what do they end up doing? They end up making that move, which is from 640 all the way up to VWAP, and actually a little above. So I think they ended the day, yep, right at this pivot, which is close to 40. So that was about a 100-point move. 100-point move in 30 minutes. Easy peasy. That's your afternoon squeeze when it comes to a big range volatility. This doesn't happen all the time. When there's low range, when there's high range, then there's potential profit taking, or there's a potential scoop. Also, see you have you see how this candle closed. This is a 4-hour candle. You see how they came down, and this is a failed breakdown. So potentially tomorrow, this could be a failed breakdown reversal. So that could be the bottom for the beginning of the week, and then they could end up doing Wednesday right here, Thursday fill in the gap, and then probably, you know, Friday they could come back down. So we could hit, this could have been the bottom for the week, right? And it could easily go all the way back here. So fill in the gap. So even though you have a huge move down, if you're a day trader, you have to be constantly looking for both directions. But this is what I don't want to see. I don't want to see a candle. You see how they call it, I guess, a shooting star, where they're pushing this up above a level. If they would have pushed this up and they couldn't close above that level, then that's weak, and they potentially could gap it down and then come down to the -1 ATR for the multi-day. So other than that, there's another thing I'm trying to look into is the SATI ATR ribbons. And so if you can tell, the pivot ribbon, well, that was not supposed to be like that. Let's see. That's a 3-minute. You want to do a, I think it was a 5-minute, because I'm using a 5-minute candle, right? And in reality, that's almost not the best way to use it either. So SATI pivot ribbon, here it is. SATI ATR levels, SATI ATR levels multi-day. If there was a level, I believe, let's look at 10 minutes. Nope, 10 minutes is not good. 5 minutes. There was something. 3 minutes doesn't make any sense. It's too quick. Anyways, look into that, because what it was showing me throughout the day, it was showing me that this EMA was right here. So it made it very easy to make a decision on whether the trend was continued or not. But you see, at the end of the day, we were getting at that point, and then it started breaking out. Sometimes this can be distracting because it's a lagging indicator, so you just don't know. The EMA sometimes is helpful because versus VWAP, but at the end of the day, the way I showed you and what I showed you is getting into levels is the most critical thing. Like, look right here, getting into levels. This sometimes scares me when I see this push up. I'm thinking, oh my God, they're going to squeeze it, but you have to think of these levels as walls. Look at this wall, and then when it's not a wall and it breaks through, then it's telling me that there might be some weakness. See, it breaks through, comes back down, but then it needs to. Think of this as a coil. This is coiling, and trapping people to then reverse, right? This right here, trapping people, reverse. The most the most profitable and quickest moves that can be made are the ones that happen really, really quick into a level. So see how it goes pop, 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 pop real quick. And then this is about 30 minutes later, and then they squeeze everybody out. But a lot of times what will end up happening is if you have a move quick into a level, like that last 30 minutes, and then it closes right there, and the next TPO opens, immediately you go long, and a lot of times it'll retrace that entire candle. So that's why you want to be careful. So depends on how you trade, but you want to see another interesting thing. From the close to the close, it's 150 points. What is that? From the close, basically down here, give or take. This is what they call the measured move. So right here would have been sort of your halfback. I mean, I guess you could have got. See, ideally, I was doing this, and up to here. This is where you open. This is where you closed or you found bottom, and ideally, that is where you want to go. You want to get down to the 610, and that would have been a true measured move. But a lot of times you can tell the amount of momentum you'll have in the afternoon if you play the afternoon based upon the range for the morning. So if you figure out the range in the morning, you can figure out the range in the afternoon. Anything more than that is super extended. So like I would have loaded up right down here, but unfortunately they didn't give me the opportunity to really get down to this pivot. But your next best area would have been when you saw that it came back above, and then you go long right here. And this was the last like 15 minutes. So anyways, that was a lot to unpack, but you see how so the last thing I wanted to say was this line right here and why I say 12 o'clock. If you don't play the afternoon, look, you would have plenty of opportunities to get in and get out in the morning. If you do play in the afternoon, you see how critical it is to go long, and then immediately, if it breaks back below the low before that 12 o'clock candle, then that's going to be your resistance or support, and then just trust in it. Because look, if you would have just held from here to here, you don't have to worry about what's going on in here. Eventually, it'll get there. But look, it ended up getting there. So, all right, well, good luck later on in the year. Hopefully this helps. Again, this is all hindsight, when you're looking at this, but I'm showing you how to reprice action around pivots and at certain time frames. And more you do that, you'll notice how accurate these are. So, all right, good luck.